Thank you. Well, we'd like to welcome all of our members of the community who are participating virtually tonight to hear what we'll call our semifinal update on the Southern Grove Master Plan. You may remember, for those of you who were involved, that back in January, we had an open house to really talk about what do people in the community want to see in Southern Grove. And our partner, the Regional Planning Council, working with city staff, working with the input of many, many folks in the community, have been working to try to craft an outstanding master plan that really recognizes the needs of the community going forward, and as well as meeting our needs of the community today. And so I want to thank Teresa Marsarno, who is our project manager. She's also the assistant to the city manager for land development services, Kim Delaney with the Regional Planning Council. I know between Kim and Teresa, you'll introduce all the team members. But for all of you who have taken your time to either participate in January, throughout this process, or tonight, we really greatly appreciate your input, your ideas, and know that, and you can know that your involvement is making the plan for Southern Grove better, more responsive to the community, and a better long-term plan for all of us. So thank you very much. So with that, Teresa Marsarno, who is assistant to the city manager, project manager for this project, and thanks Teresa and your team for everything you've done as well. So go from here.
Thank you, Russ. And thank you to the staff that is here, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council that is here, CapTech Engineering, and the members of the public that have participated thus far, and I'll echo Russ's comments. Many of you participated in January at Kaiser, and where we solicited your input. Many of you learned that the city, after acquiring the Southern Grove property of approximately 1,200 acres through the Government Finance Corporation, we entered into an interlocal agreement with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council to help us develop this master plan. Many of you came out and provided some really valuable input, and we're back again here today in a different format, which I am very excited to be part of. This is the first time that I've participated in a virtual workshop of this nature. And right now it looks like we have over 90 participants, which is extraordinary, that all of you have taken your time out of your day and your evening to help the city. The vision with Southern Grove is to have this be our jobs corridor, it be a hub where it can enhance our quality of life and provide quality jobs. And you'll hear some of that today by Kim. What will occur today is Kim has a presentation. We also have some polling questions. We also will be accepting any questions. Staff will be answering questions individually, but also comprehensively, especially those that are to Southern Grove. So there'll be some breaks for us to kind of answer questions at that period in time, and we'll have a little fun with some polling questions. And that will be the process for today. The staff is here that will be supporting Kim. And again, I just want to thank you all for attending this Zoom virtual workshop. And I'll give it to Kim Delaney with Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, who will introduce her team and begin the presentation.
Mike, there we go. Kim Delaney, for the record, from the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and thank you for the opportunity to present. We have been working with the city for almost the past year on the Southern Grove Master Plan, and it's an opportunity not just for the city to create a land use pattern that's going to be to the benefit of city residents, but it's really a regional resource that we have in the Southern Grove area. And so we're very fortunate to have the chance to work with the city, and look forward to taking you through a tour of the plan. With me this evening from our team is Captech Engineering, Joe Capra, who's the president of Captech, and it's Steve Marquardt, who's an engineer with the firm. And so we'll both be available to answer questions as they arise. City staff as well. I have the good fortune of having the opportunity to present the master plan on behalf of the council, but we have a well-established team that has been working together for more than 30 years in different capacities, and we're happy to have the chance to work with the city. So if we go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint presentation, there's a good bit of detail to walk through for this evening. And so I will kick off the presentation with just a nice aerial of the resource that's represented by the Southern Grove area. And of course, one of the things that's unique about the property is that it's just north of the major metro area, which constitutes most of South Florida, and just south of the metro area that constitutes Orlando. So it's really kind of the hole in the donut when it comes to major job growth and development in the region. And that's one of the things that we've been finding as we've been analyzing the property. So tonight's agenda, we've kind of touched on welcome and introductions, but we have just a few more welcome slides just to walk through. And then we'll provide an overview of the study area, a tour of the plan, and the plan really breaks down into 3 different districts. There's a town center district, the biohealth district, and then the large majority of the property is really the workplace district. And then 2 key systems to talk through, transportation and stormwater, and then opportunity for Q&A at different points during the presentation, but then a wrap-up Q&A at the end and a summary of next steps. And so with that, as we mentioned, the 4 lead staff that are available to you, Teresa Lamar Sarno and Wes McCurry, both from the city and the CRA, myself and Joe Capra from Captech Engineering. So if we can for a moment before we get started, it seemed like a good opportunity to get to know each other. It's a fairly big crowd, but it's empty in the council chambers. So to give us a better idea of who's out there, the Regional Planning Council that I have the good fortune of working with is a public agency, and there are 10 regional planning councils like the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council in the state of Florida. We have boards that are comprised of a mix of elected officials and gubernatorial appointees. Both Councilmember Caravalli and Mayor Oravec participate in the council as board members. The councils were created to be an extension of local government staff. And so the councils are arranged with specialists in visioning, master planning, economic development, and complete streets. Those are the kinds of staff we've brought on into the Southern Grove project, and we handle other responsibilities as well. Emergency evacuation, all sorts of grant dollars coming down from the federal and states to the locals, and we provide technical assistance as needed. And so that's who your facilitator is for this evening, and also facilitator of the plan. And then to get a better understanding of who's out there, we just wanted to get a couple of test questions. And so Avi, who's the rock star IT wizard, has assisted in arranging for test questions that you can participate on your screen. So we have just a test survey question to make sure the system works. So just to test to make sure it works, we'll start with superpowers. So if I had a superpower, which one would I choose? Leaping tall buildings in a single bound, flying at the speed of light, swimming like a dolphin, super strength, or using a magic lasso of truth? Let's see if the test questions work. Go ahead, Davi.
Yep, it's on.
Okay, great.
Now, I'll tell you when everybody kind of voted.
What do they do? Do they just click on it?
Just click on it.
So as we understand, all you need to do is click on that question on the screen, and it should register your vote. And we'll give everybody about 15 seconds, counting now. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Avi, that's a quick 15 seconds, but sure, let's see what the results are. Flying at the speed of light, that's probably the power I would take, although I keep a magic lasso of truth handy just in case. So thank you for participating. It's good to know that we have budding superheroes that are in the workshop tonight. Why don't we jump forward and go to the next survey question, which will give us a better understanding of who's participating tonight. So Avi, if we can go ahead and pull the PowerPoint back up again. So the first question is, how would you describe yourself? Are you a native to Port St. Lucie? Are you native to Florida, outside of the city? Are you native to the U.S., or are you native outside the U.S.? So why don't we do maybe another, how about a 5-second countdown for these? So it's pretty easy to
You
answer.
have all 3 questions popping up.
Okay,
Demographics.
great. So the first question is going to be how you describe yourself. The second question, what age range do you fall into? So there are 5 different generations typically that comprise the public and the city. So Generation Z, born before 2015. Generation Y, also known as the millennials, between 1980 and 1994. Generation X, the one I'm in, from 65 to 80, with frankly the best music, but well, that's beside the point. Baby boomers, 46 to 64, or the greatest generation. So, and the third question will be, which of the following best describes you? Where do you live in the city? East or west of I-95? Are you a resident of St. Lucie County outside of the city limits? Do you live south of St. Lucie, north of St. Lucie County? Are you not a Florida resident, or are you a resident of another galaxy? So those are our 3 survey questions, all right? So Avi, I'm going to give it to your technical genius to pull the questions up.
Yep. So they're voting right now.
Great. So there's a couple of questions to work on, and I'm guessing that folks would scroll down on their screen, Avi?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so for the public, you'd be scrolling down on the screen as you bubble in the circles. You don't need a number 2 pencil because it's the new millennium. So you can just click on the circles, and we'll say maybe, give folks maybe 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and a little margin because there are 3 seconds, and there we go. 3 questions. Great, so let's see who's participating tonight. So most folks that are participating tonight are from the city of Port St. Lucie, living west of 95, not a surprise, with a focal interest in the project. And a majority of folks participating are residents. Can we look at the second one? Great. Most of the folks in the workshop tonight are baby boomers, with pretty good representation in Generation Y and X as well. So, and then the third one, thanks, Avi. Which best describes everybody participating tonight are residents of the city, west of I-95. Great. So, okay, let's go ahead and go back to the presentation. Super. So, 2 other demographic questions for you, which relate to your journey to work. And one of the things that we've heard during the master plan process is how important it is for the city to increase the number of jobs versus the number of residents in the city. And so that relates very closely to the journey to work that folks take in the city of Port St. Lucie. So 2 questions related to the journey to work or your commute on the typical day. The first one, if you're employed, which best describes your journey to work? Do you work at home? Do you walk or bike to work? Do you drive your car? Use a carpool or van pool? Do you take the bus, or do you not work at this time? So that's the first question about journey to work. And the second one will be, if you travel to work, how long is your typical commute? Do you travel less than 5 miles, which would be unusual in the region? Do you travel 5 to 10, 11 to 20, 21 to 50, more than 50 miles? And we know we have a lot of folks that travel more than 50 miles to work that live in the city of Port St. Lucie and St. Lucie County, or do you not travel to work? So those are our 2 survey questions to get an idea of who's participating. So if you can go ahead and pull up the survey.
They're voting right now.
Great. So if you can go ahead and vote. Let's go with 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, let's see what our travel characteristics are of the folks that are participating tonight. Okay, if we can leave it on the screen just for a moment, don't scroll past it so I can actually read it for just a sec. So the majority of folks drive their car to work, or are not working or working at home. And of course, we know we have unusual characteristics right now given the COVID pandemic, and we don't know how those characteristics will change going forward. But we know that shift has taken place. Almost no one bikes or walks to work, and almost no one takes the bus or van pool or carpool. So we have mostly drivers that are in, of the folks that are traveling to work. And then the next question, if you can, and stop there just for a moment. And this is one that I think is particularly relevant to the master plan discussion. And it's the reason I put it in as the fifth question of these, which is, if you're traveling to work, how far do you typically go? And this is one of the key inputs to the master plan with respect to job diversity and job importance. So most of the folks that are participating are traveling, let's see, at least, I'm just trying to add real fast. So most don't travel to work at all, and we have a unique circumstance right now because we're in COVID-19. But if we had asked this question a bit prior, what the census data tells us is that the vast majority of residents in the city of Port St. Lucie that are working commute significantly to work. They tend to commute southbound to the job centers that exist to the south. And one of the goals of the master plan is to help remedy that and internalize more jobs in the city. Okay, next slide. And we're going to stick with those are all the survey questions for you for now, and we're going to stick with the presentation and start going. So the study area overview. Many of you may be familiar with the study area already. The study area for the master plan is identified in the green on this map, and this is part of the area the city annexed in the early 2000s. There have been a number of prior planning efforts that have taken place over time, but the conditions have changed in both the city of Port St. Lucie and around the property in particular. And so the master plan effort is intended to take all the good ideas that have been generated in the prior work efforts undertaken by the city and modernize them for the current condition. So the study area that is the focus is identified in the orange on this map. That outer boundary represents almost 1,300 acres that are all located east of I-95, west of I-95, between Tradition Parkway at the northern end and Becker Road at the south. The project objectives have been extensive, and the master plan process has looked at a demographic and economic profile, looked at real estate conditions, both historic conditions and projected conditions, market and development potentials for the properties that are controlled by the city, looked at financial and funding mechanisms to implement the master plan, and the goal has been to develop an updated land development and infrastructure master plan, including an assessment of existing resources to help create a better sense of place in the city on this property in particular. And in addition, the project objectives include an implementation approach to look at community development and phasing strategies for the city to implement over time. There has been extensive analysis of demographics, and I only have 2 slides, but all of the detail is included in the city's inventory. The key demographics that we wanted to point out: the city has been growing remarkably with a rate of development that's unparalleled amongst comparable cities in the region and across the state. The city is at almost 203,000 residents as of the latest census count in April. And one of the key characteristics to take away from the analysis, just to keep in mind, is the ratio of jobs to residents. And what we have found is the city has about 24 jobs for every 100 residents in the population based on the last census data. And while the city has gained additional jobs, residential population growth has outpaced job growth. And so we know that, as you can see in the graphic on the right, there are about 17,600 residents coming into the city, employees coming into the city every day to work. But as of the census data, almost 58,000 residents leaving the city every day, going to jobs elsewhere. And again, that's been an underpinning in the study with respect to the importance of jobs. About 12,300 residents live in the city and work in the city, just to call out that third statistic. But that exporting of jobs, again, is a finding in the master plan that has really driven the emphasis on jobs creation. And you'll see that as we tour the master plan in a couple of minutes. So with respect to land development activity, both the city of Port St. Lucie and this portion of the city in particular have been remarkably successful in bringing a range of different a range of different land use types over the past 15 years or so. So this map illustrates the Mattamy Homes property that is located west of Village Parkway, for the most part, characterized predominantly by residential of varying types. Certainly, the Cleveland Clinic and the biohealth uses around the Cleveland Clinic are significant city, county, and regional resources that are located in a manner that can be a magnet for additional job growth and investment. Cleveland Clinic has been making headlines with the expansion of its different facilities and diversification of the biohealth uses that are located in the district around the hospital. And in addition, there is additional expansion opportunity, as you can see in the aerial photo to the left, where the hospital can expand its footprint and begin to overtake buildings existing to the south of the hospital and new construction that creates for an easy interconnection with the hospital's main campus. Around the Cleveland Clinic facility, there's additional hotel and medical office that's already been constructed. Educational use in the form of Kaiser University exists just to the south. Additional workplace uses are already coming online, and this map illustrates some of the workplace users that are coming into the district under contract with the Tambone Group. The most recent headlines focus on two key uses that I want to focus upon just for a moment. The first is Project Bullet, which is as of yet unnamed, but a large-scale user that is proposed to be located in the southern portion of the district, pardon me, with significant expansion opportunity and potential. And this use was introduced during the course of master plan development, and so the master plan has been adjusted to accommodate this use's footprint and circulation needs. The other major activity that's taken place during the course of the master plan is the city's advanced negotiations with the Sansone Group that are looking to collaboratively work with the city to develop the 300 southern acres at the southern end of the district. And the master plan has been adjusted as well to enable the city to incorporate these users at the same time it develops its master plan in an iterative fashion. The Sansone Group is proposing to build just over 3 million square feet, a major job opportunity for the city and the region in a location that is, as we mentioned earlier, the hole in the donut for large-scale job development in Southeast Florida. Additional workplace and residential uses coming online, for example, the Oculus project that hasn't begun construction yet. Retail and restaurant uses are nearby, and so across the street from the biohealth portion of the district, there are a series of convenient retail and restaurant uses that have been developed thus far. And of course, immediately to the west, substantial residential development on a scale that is headline grabbing. The Port St. Lucie housing market continues to be one of the fastest growing housing markets in the region and in the state of Florida. And the economic analysis indicates that is a trend that we expect will continue as dollars continue to come into the city and the state of Florida from urban centers in the Northeast. These are the destinations that buyers are looking for. And so not a surprise to the residents of the city that see how much activity is taking place, and certainly a characteristic to celebrate. Tradition Village Square, of course, located just north of the district and actually technically outside the study area that we were asked to analyze, but we couldn't help ourselves as we were trying to locate all of the uses desired by the public. Tradition Village Square, one of the successful mixed-use centers in the region, beautiful design, a wonderful town scale, and setting for lots of different special events and activities. Illustrated in this image, of course, one of the Food Truck Fridays that's become very popular, already a successful destination, and one that, if designed correctly, the master plan will continue to reinforce. And then just across the street from the Tradition Village Square is the landings at Tradition. And this is an opportunity for continued infill and redevelopment over time. What we know in terms of trends is that the types of retailers that have existed over the last investment cycle are starting to shift. And so there are opportunities to redevelop some of the currently vacant uses within the landings with other uses that would better balance the mix of activities in the city. And we'll touch on that as we get forward in the presentation. So with respect to the study area, analysis, and evaluation, to develop the master plan, the Regional Planning Council team working with the city did a very careful assessment of all of the infrastructure, systems that exist in and around the Southern Grove area. So these slides illustrate the Tradition Trail, various easements that exist on the property, the street network, and you can see there's not a lot of street network to begin with, the water and sewer systems, and stormwater and drainage. In addition, the city held a very successful public open house back in January of this year. I don't think I've been to a more enthusiastic crowd in the region in the past year. The city had, I think, about 275 residents that participated, and over the course of 2 hours, provided substantial input about the types of uses that were desired in the Southern Grove Master Plan. And this slide illustrates the range of uses that were identified. And so you can see jumping out, this is a word cloud that actually corresponds to the popularity of different ideas that were generated. So the big words are there because more people wanted to see those uses. And you can see the kinds of uses that folks were talking about. Different food and dining opportunities, a desire to shy away from fast food, and that frankly, this part of the city is served already now by some of the fast food restaurants that are located across Village Parkway to the west. Opportunities for young adults. There's a very heavy theme about places to go and things to do. One of the driving themes that we heard in the workshop was folks didn't want to have to drive south to Palm Beach County or north to Orange County, Orlando, to have things to do, but they wanted to have things to do close to home in the city. And with the city's population growth, certainly the question was, don't we have enough population to support some of those uses closer to home? And so we've tried to identify the marketability of those uses and find homes for them in the master plan. So with respect to the drivers that have fed the master plan process, the next two slides summarize the priorities that we've taken away during the master plan process based on the public input, the market analysis, the demographic characteristics and growth trends of the city, and the input that we've been getting from all sources during the master plan development. Primarily, there's a desire to increase the value of the city-owned land. It's a unique circumstance for a city to have the ability to control nearly 1,200 acres of developable land along an I-95 corridor with 2 interchanges. It's a remarkable resource, and increasing the value of that land is a driver of the master plan. Maximize the number of jobs. We touched on the imbalance between the number of residents and the number of jobs in the city. Create gateway entrances, particularly along Tradition Parkway and Becker Road. Improve stormwater management efficiency. This was a tricky aspect of the plan. What became clear is the property owned by the city has substantial stormwater obligations. So we have stormwater that leaves the properties that are developed west of Village Parkway, and it must travel across the city-owned land to get over to the canal that runs along I-95. So we have some plans to illustrate how that can be managed more efficiently, effectively, have a better environmental condition, and have better stormwater management overall. Utilize best soils on the site to bring down the cost of development, create a sense of place and destination for residents. Expand interconnectivity, and also distribute the value of I-95. What's remarkable about the property is its visibility along I-95, and so the more properties that can pick up on that visibility, the higher the value of all the lands the city has to offer in transactions. In addition, and there's more, establish a more compact urban arrangement of buildings and uses. That by default makes things more walkable and connected. Expand the Tradition Trail network, enhance walkability, improve the bike pedestrian crossing, particularly at Tradition Parkway, getting over to the Town Center District. Acknowledge there's an FP&L easement across the property, which just creates an additional complication. Consider the two I-95 access points that are currently adopted in the city's DRI documents related to the property. Those include a potential interchange at Marshall Parkway and I-95 and a crossing at Parr Road. Those two connection points are still under analysis, and so there's no conclusions made as of yet as to whether or not they will ultimately be constructed. The plan gives the city the flexibility to allow those to be developed if needed, but they aren't required to make a successful district happen. So, and then finally, make the city more sustainable, a place to live, work, play, and learn.
This is Teresa. I wanted to make a quick announcement to those of you that are on. I see some of you are asking questions, which is amazing, so thank you. But I wanted to be clear, if you would like to ask a question, you're able to do that at any time. There is a little box on the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it says Q&A. Open that up and enter your question in the chat, and we'll be able to answer that question. And then when Kim is done with her polling, or I will be done with the polling,
Right.
We will answer any kind of Southern Grove type questions that the team can address, and we'll make sure every question gets answered. So just want to be clear, you got to tap on the Q&A, enter your question in the chat box, and your question will either be answered live or also in the chat box.
Super. Okay, go back. If we can go back to the slides, we will start touring the master plan. Great. So that was we were actually at my break point. So thank you, Teresa, for jumping in. So I needed to get a little oxygen. So the next portion of the presentation is going to give us a chance to provide a tour of the master plan. So why don't I take us through the first part of the district, and then we'll take a break. And Teresa and team, if there are questions that you want to address, we'll take a break at the end of the Town Center District portion, and then try to answer those questions that are relevant at that point, and then keep going. Okay? So the master plan extends from the top of the Tradition Village Center down to Becker Road, let me characterize the main roadways within the master plan. Tradition Parkway, just at the northern end. Southwest Discovery Way, separating what is the BioHealth District from the Workplace District. Marshall Parkway, of course, a major east-west roadway. Parr Drive coming into the district, and then Becker Road, truncating the southern end. And Village Parkway along the western edge is the spine of the area that the master plan is addressing. And so walking through the pieces of that, there we go, come on. There we go. So the first district to talk through is the Town Center District. Now, one of the things that we learned in the master plan process is there's a lot of enthusiasm about the things there are in the city that are successful. Whoops, there we go. Tradition Village Center is a destination that people in the city love. It is playing a successful role in a lifestyle entertainment district for the city. And it is a center that has a little additional room for development capacity. And the types of uses that residents expressed a desire for, there we go, which are opportunities for young adults, a theater, more food and dining opportunities. Those can actually be accommodated in an expanded Tradition Village Center in a manner that will help that center become more successful. So there were lots of different things to do category items that the public raised in the workshop. There's desire for a cinema complex. We heard about having an independent art house cinema, if the market could possibly bring that. We heard about lots of different active recreational uses as well. a Top Golf or driving range type attraction, indoor paintball, a water park is an idea that was raised by a number of folks, or some type of outdoor aquatic activity. Indoor trampoline park, and we know there's one that's currently operating in the city on the east side, but these are the types of uses that are benefited by I-95 visibility and access, so Market continues to be present in this location. A miniature golf course, indoor go-karts, indoor skate or surf parks. Those are the types of uses that residents had a lot of enthusiasm for. And so we began to analyze that area that is north of Tradition Parkway. So on this slide, Tradition Parkway runs along the left-hand side, and the slide is oriented so north is to the right. We analyzed the type of infill opportunities that existed in Tradition Town Center with a focus on trying to find those uses and patterns of use that would make Tradition Town Center more successful, but not compromise the ability for the city to provide the maximum number of jobs possible in the Southern Grove District. And so as we began to evaluate the types of uses that could fit in the Tradition Village Center and the Landing, what we found was a lot of opportunity for infill. And this slide illustrates with yellow buildings the types of locations that would be appropriate to infill the mix of uses in the town center district in a manner that could be walkable, interconnected, capitalize on the infrastructure that exists, and help make the entire town center district more successful. And so I should mention, this view is a 20 to 30 year build out. We know the market won't be bringing this scale of use in the 5 to 10 year time frame, but this is a build out condition that would allow the city to infill uses that would be available to both residents and folks visiting the city to bring additional revenue into the city and internalize those trips for city residents. There we go. A couple axonometric views, for example, a movie theater complex that could be developed at the southern portion of the district. Additional infill opportunities across from the Publix to help frame the roadway leading towards the lake. And convention type space that could be constructed next to the Christ Fellowship Church at the northern end of the Landing property. As we further analyzed the location for the active uses that had so much interest in the workshop, what we found is the best location for those uses likely is along I-95 just north of Tradition Parkway. What we know is a Top Golf or an indoor go-kart facility or paintball arenas, they require both I-95 visibility and access. And so the location that appears to be the most marketable would be north of Tradition Parkway, along the edge of I-95, and allow the opportunity for new uses to come in to take down some of the space that's become vacant in the Landing and utilize that area over time. Again, the range of uses that we heard from the public are illustrated on this slide. Everything from outdoor aquatic uses to and Top Golf and golf driving ranges to a variety of indoor facilities that are the perfect fit for empty big box space if it's not filled by other retail users as market conditions change. So I'm going to pause there, because we actually get to the next set of questions, Teresa. And I know you have a couple of questions that have been raised from the public.
Yes, so how about, now I'm on the mic. How about we take the polling questions now, and I'll facilitate those. And Avi, do you want to just bring up the polling questions and I'll introduce those? Okay, wonderful. Survey question number 6, so everyone should be ready to go. How often do you visit Tradition Village Square and the landing at Tradition? All of you, Village Square is in the heart of Tradition. There's a lot of events that in the pre-COVID took place there, and I think some might be starting back up. And also the landing at Tradition, if you don't know where that is, there's a Target there and a couple of big box locations. So let us know how often you visit those. Then question number 2 is, which are your favorite events in the Tradition Village Square and the landing at Tradition? I know they did have Food Truck Fridays. There's been some festivals, I believe, also a farmer's market, which I think that's up and running again. So let us know which are your favorite events. And also the last question is, which types of active recreational uses do you think are the best fit for Southern Grove? We got a variety of options there. Many of these came directly from you from the meeting in January. So let us know what active recreation uses do you prefer. Give you a few seconds for that. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's see. Okay, so it looks like about a little over half of you visit the Tradition Village Square and the landing weekly. So that's great. And then you enjoy all of the events in Tradition. So that's good to know. That's about 45%. And which types of activities do you prefer? So I like a few of these. Okay. And then we have kind of a tie between golf, water park is still up there, and then we may need some other options, it looks like. So, all right, wonderful. We have, thank you. We have 7 questions, Kim and team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through them and let's see who's the best person to answer them. There's a couple of questions related to different types of uses that they would like to see. For example, a post office. Also, what retail things have already been committed to building? I think maybe Wes might be able to speak to some of that. And I'll pause there with those 2 questions. Give me 1 second. Yes, those, and then I'll lump the other ones up.
Okay, great. So a post office is hard to land. It's hard to land a new post office in today's condition. But maybe the city can pursue a relationship with a private vendor to bring in a postal service. And so certainly there's available square footage in Tradition Village Square to accommodate that type of use. As far as retail, Wes, I would defer to you as to retail users that are anticipated to come in.
Sure. So most of the activity that we've seen with the property since the city has taken ownership of it through the Governmental Finance Corporation has been centered around industrial type uses. We have seen a little bit of retail activity. We've sold about 3 acres at the corner of Discovery and Village Parkway that is currently under construction for a small retail center of about 10,000 square feet.
Okay, I think I have a couple more questions. So some of these might be for the engineers. Is there a plan for a wildlife preserve or maybe a preserve area? Specifically a wildlife preserve, golf cart pathways along Tradition Parkway to Becker Road. I know we have some trails system that we're talking about, so we can speak to that. And will there be mass transit to major airports? Now, I know we have some mass transit that we're looking at, also maybe BEEP, and we can speak to those 2 questions.
Sure. So let me try to touch on those. So the first, with respect to wildlife preserves, we don't have a lot of native habitat left on the Southern Grove property that's controlled by the city. But what we've done, and we'll touch on when we get to the stormwater discussion, is to create, we're recommending the city create a lake system. There are a few wetlands that must be preserved on the property, and those are identified in the plan. And so when we get an opportunity to pull the plan back up, I'll point those out. And so by enhancing those wetland areas, we would expect we'd see a better wildlife response to that. And related to that, there is a tradition trail network that's identified in the master plan. That network is designed to be able to accommodate people that are walking, biking, or using golf carts, or potentially an autonomous vehicle like the BEEP system that the Mattamy company is pursuing with the city collaboratively. And so that trail system would extend from Becker Road north through the city's holdings in the Southern Grove District all the way up to the hospital. It would be designed to run along the edges of lakes wherever possible because it gives it a natural edge. And it helps buffer those lakes actually from development and from vehicles. And so those are two opportunities to really kind of bring out the recreational benefits that come from the Southern Grove District. The other question was with respect to mass transit to get to the airport and other destinations. And the city, of course, participates with the St. Lucie TPO. That's a transportation planning organization that works in the field of mass transit. It helps facilitate mass transit for the city. There are some bus routes that currently service the Southern Grove area. And as development increases over time, we would expect those bus routes would be increased as well. There's also work that's underway in Southeast Florida, led by the Department of Transportation, to provide more extensive regional transit or regional transit service, if you will, between van pooling and buses as well, to take folks from St. Lucie County and the city of Port St. Lucie in particular to job centers south. Those are also transit vehicles that are designed to connect to Tri-Rail, which is the regional train service that runs from Palm Beach County down to Miami-Dade. And so those are opportunities to provide that transit service. In addition, FDOT, the Department of Transportation, offers small groups access to van pooling or carpooling, and they can even provide the vehicles if there are enough folks that are going to common destinations. So we'll be sure that Teresa and the city staff has the contact info for South Florida Commuter Services, which is the regional organizing entity that helps provide those vehicles for folks that need carpool or van pooling to get down to jobs. There are a number of those that go, for example, to the VA hospital in Riviera Beach from St. Lucie County and the city, and those opportunities continue to exist. So, did that cover it pretty well, Teresa?
I believe it does. We have a couple more questions for the team. Could you speak to cultural arts and entertainment areas around the large lake? There's a question if we're still proposing a 150-acre cultural arts entertainment area. I believe the question is around large lake situated north of the industrial area at Becker Road. And then I can speak to, are there planned stages to give a sense of when some development might begin? As you know, we're talking today about the Southern Grove master area. That is the government finance corporation area, which is 1,200 acres. And that's what this master plan proposes. We have several opportunities for some warehouse and industrial activity to occur. And Kim will continue to walk through what that development pattern will look like. But on the other side, and the Tradition and Riverland and Mattamy area, which is west of Village Parkway, those are residential areas with some potential commercial areas there as well. And the timing of that is not, some of it is occurring now, and you see it coming off the ground today, and some of it will continue to be developed. So hopefully that answers your question as far as getting a sense of when the development might begin. So for the particular area that we're talking about right now, we do have some current industrial properties that will be developing probably in the next couple of years. Next year or the following. So you'll be seeing some of that come out of the ground. And Kim or Wes, I don't know if one of you want to answer the question about the cultural arts entertainment area on the lake situated north of the industrial area at Becker Road.
Sure. So I'd be happy to answer that. So the Southern Grove property has been identified for lots of different uses over time. In the early days, when the property was developed, when the property was first developed as a DRI, or Development of Regional Impact, there was a plan for a very large-scale shopping mall, about 2 million square feet, to be located along Becker Road at the southern end. And of course, new shopping malls aren't being developed in the current market, and haven't been for the last couple of years. And so when we analyzed the Southern Grove district, what we found is that even with the city's growth rate being so robust, the city has a lot of retail destinations within it already. And in fact, the US as a whole, and Florida in particular, is really over-retailed. We have more retail per square footage than, for example, 10 times the retail per person that you find in Europe, and 8 times the amount of retail per person that you find in Canada. And so that statistic translates into demand for new retail to be built. And we know there's a desire for cultural activities and those types of settings and lifestyle settings to be developed within the Southern Grove area generally. And so when we analyzed the market demand, what we found was there really is not enough market demand to create a cultural destination that would compete with the current Tradition Village Square. It's already a setting that people are used to going to. It's successful in special events. It has great access, and it has great visibility. And so as we looked at the master plan, what we recommend to the city from both an economic and a land development standpoint is that those cultural uses should be co-located in the current Tradition Village Square. And that portion of the general area, it's outside of the master plan technically, but it's related. So we would recommend the city should put its effort in trying to maximize the cultural, entertainment, and lifestyle development activities that make sense adjacent to and coordinated with the current village center. It has all of the access and infrastructure necessary, and we don't have enough market share to create a second lifestyle district that would potentially compete with the Village Square as it exists today. And so that area south along Becker Road, and I'll talk through that when we get into the master plan, we have recommended a pattern of development that would allow for mixed use, but we think that mixed use would lean more heavily towards probably residential and a small amount of neighborhood serving retail. Like a grocery store anchored shopping center at the corner of Becker Road and Village. There's enough market for a small grocery store like that with some additional retail and restaurant use. But the majority of the larger scale retail and cultural uses, we would suggest take place north of Tradition Parkway. And the city would be well served to help make those happen, make it easier for those things to be developed there, because that's the destination that makes sense. And it makes the whole rest of the district more successful when those uses have a home and they're co-located with other food and beverage and activity centers like those that exist today north of Tradition Parkway. So.
Do we want to continue with questions?
Happy to walk through the bio district if you'd like, and then we can circle back again.
Yeah,
How's that
absolutely,
sound?
because I think I believe you're going to answer some of the questions that are being added by those of you that are on Zoom, I believe will be answered in your presentation. And we'll make sure of that before we leave. And we will have another break to answer some more questions.
We'll have another break with some more questions, and then we have a Q&A session at the end. So, great. So, rolling forward, so we've had it. Thank you for, by the way, giving us some info about how the Tradition Village Square and the landing work for you and how they can be amenitized. Now, I should point out, with any of the uses in that area, that is not property that's controlled by the city. It's not owned by the city. And so I should emphasize, the master plan can't deliver these types of uses, but what we can do is offer the city some policy recommendations to make it easier for these uses to develop if the market wants to bring them. And again, the location we think they're best housed would be north of Tradition Parkway, particularly. So the next part of the master plan focuses on what we've begun to call the biohealth district, and that's the district that's at the northern end of the study area, running from Tradition Parkway down to Discovery, and it's highlighted in the red dashed lines on the slide at the moment. And we've taken some time to really detail the pattern of buildings and streets that we think make sense in that district. So certainly the Cleveland Clinic and the ancillary biohealth uses that have co-located with the Cleveland Clinic make for not just a city resource, it's a regional resource and a regional destination. And we see from a team standpoint, that use as a tremendous catalyst for additional biohealth development to take place in and around the Cleveland Clinic to bring just the types of jobs that are necessary, that are the types of jobs, thank you so much, that people are leaving the city for today, driving to destinations outside. And so as we detailed the biohealth district, the next series of slides illustrates the pattern of buildings and streets that help infill that portion of the Southern Grove holdings to make it walkable, capital intensive, and sustainable. So the first image on the screen illustrates the existing hospital footprint is in gray, just north of the lake. That's in the center of the slide. In this image, north is up. The roadway running the diagonal at the top end of the image is actually Tradition Parkway, and at the bottom is just to the south is Discovery. In a first phase of light implementation, this slide refers to suggests it as spot implementation. There's an opportunity to infill the district to the south of the hospital, and what's important to take away from this image is the pattern of streets and blocks. What we've tried to do in the master plan is illustrate by placement of buildings and placement of parking a mechanism to help create a more walkable district. What we know about biohealth employees is they work shift hours, they want to access goods and services. We have those goods and services along Village Parkway in the form of some of the restaurant uses that have been located there in the last 2 years or so. And we have a great town center destination in Tradition Village Square, just north of Tradition Parkway. So where we can, what we recommend to the city is to require a compact pattern of building development that helps the streets walkability by aligning them with buildings and pushing parking away from the edge of the street to create a better walkable condition. What you can see in the image on the screen is kind of a central alignment starting at the southern end with a roadway that would come into the biohealth district and continue through at a minimum with a trail section that would go around the lake, and if it's possible to construct it from an architectural and access standpoint, perhaps even take it across the lake. And the trail continues all the way north past the hospital, north to an intersection at Tradition Parkway. A next layer of development could introduce additional buildings, again, following a compact urban form. to continue to align streets with buildings, and at build-out, the district could potentially have up to 2 million feet of biohealth use, additional to what is existing in the hospital today. Now, one of the things to point out about this image that I think is helpful, I-95 is to the right and Village Parkway is to the left. With the pattern of buildings that can be introduced over time in the biohealth district, there's an opportunity to distribute the value of having I-95 visibility. And that's something to keep in mind as I get into the axonometric images that correspond to this district. But as you step buildings up from the edge of I-95, with the hospital being at its highest point at 10 stories, each of the buildings can have a billboard front, if you will, with signage visible to I-95. It raises the value of all the properties in the district if the building heights are adjusted to allow for the gradual step up of buildings from the I-95 edge to the center of the site. So a different pattern of uses. The uses south of the hospital, by the way, can take a number of forms. They could be residential, they could be biohealth workplace, they could be a combination of the two. They could also be hospitality. What's important about, the plan recommendations in this district is a very careful pattern of buildings and parking so that we create the best walkability and intense development we can next to the tremendous catalyst that is the Cleveland Clinic. It's a unique magnet for development. So our recommendation to the city is to recommend minimum building heights adjacent to the hospital and within the district to be sure that the city gets the maximum value both from an ad valorem tax revenue standpoint as well as job creation in this part of the district. It's unique and it's unparalleled. The first view, the first axonometric sketch, if you can imagine, you're in the air at around the intersection of Tradition Parkway and I-95, and you're looking to the southwest in this image. What is illustrated in the center, the tall building in the adjacent to the hospital, is potentially a new hospital building that could be constructed over time. The existing hospital building is in gray. What's suggested in terms of building program is a 6-story building height along I-95, maybe about an 8-story building height where the hospital is, and maybe a 10-story building height adjacent to the hospital and just to the west of it. What that type of arrangement of buildings would allow is the distribution of the value of having I-95 visibility. So every edge of each of those buildings has an opportunity to be seen from I-95. The pattern of uses, as you can see, that's recommended in this drawing would suggest a very compact form of building and parking arrangement on the site will help maximize the value, protect the investment that's represented by the hospital, and generate the greatest yield both from an ad valorem standpoint and a job intensity as well. The Tradition Trail that was referenced in some of the earlier questions is actually included within each of the districts. And so in this image, Tradition Trail is actually aligning I-95 between the edge of the linear lake that is located just to the east of the corner buildings and the buildings themselves. We would suggest that Tradition Trail can also be taken through the center of the site. Whether the trail goes around the lake or through the middle of the lake is going to be a function of design and resources. But at a minimum, a trail around the lake is an amenity value, both for the employees in the hospital and the adjacent buildings, as well as residents. And that trail alignment can begin at the southern end, come through the pattern of buildings that are located south of the lake, and then continue north adjacent to the hospital to a connection point along Tradition Parkway. What's suggested in the drawing is another very long-term concept, which is a mid-block pedestrian crossing that connects across to Tradition Trail on the north side. Not necessary, but it's a design opportunity. Otherwise, the trail connects back to to Village Parkway and continues to the north. A second image, again, just to kind of underscore the value of carefully prescribing building heights within this district to maximize the visibility of users coming in the district that are really taking advantage of their proximity to the hospital. So again, as building heights are stepping up from I-95 to the interior of the site, each of the buildings becomes more valuable because it has visibility from I-95 that otherwise could be blocked by one user taking all of the visibility right at the edge. Now, one of the things to touch on at this point is the idea of improving connections. And this really goes to the heart of the tradition trail questions that were asked earlier. What this slide illustrates is the very tricky relationship between the Tradition Village Center at the north of Tradition Parkway and the Biohealth District to the south. The way it looks today, it's a pretty unfriendly intersection to cross. So this aerial is intended just to capture how it looks today at the intersection of Tradition and Village. So, and if you're out there trying to get across on foot or by bike, it's a pretty threatening environment that doesn't tend to attract a lot of choice users, let's say. You're only crossing that intersection typically if you have to, not because you really want to, by virtue of its design. So instead, a design solution that we suggest to the city is a design idea called a Dutch intersection. So a Dutch intersection is a way to formalize and improve the safety for pedestrians and cyclists as they cross intersections like the one at Tradition and Village. And this image actually is a Dutch intersection that was just constructed in California. They actually did originate in the Netherlands, but they're now becoming more popular in the US, and we're finding actually in a number of communities pursuing Dutch intersections to improve bicycle pedestrian conditions. At Village Parkway, the existing condition is represented by the aerial that's on the screen at the moment. And so we do have crosswalks and we do have bike lanes, but they're located on the edge of very wide roadways in a manner that makes a very long crossing from, for example, if you're on the south side of Tradition Parkway and you're trying to cross Tradition Parkway, you're crossing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes to get from one side to the other. And you have nowhere you can take a break or find refuge. And so, existing condition looks like this. Improved condition would introduce, would extend the medians out and create a safe haven for pedestrians to stop when we're crossing the roadway in either direction, and also tuck the bike lane behind median bulb outs at the corners of the intersection. This is a standard improvement, but one that isn't on the books yet. And so a recommendation to the city is to pursue an intersection improvement like this one over time to improve the connections again between the Biohealth District and the Tradition Village Center. Moving a little further to the south, and this is the last district that we'll cover because it's all that's left, is the Workplace District. And so that Workplace District is identified in the red dashed line on the map. It isn't that the Biohealth District isn't workplace also. They both offer workplaces, but it has a slightly different orientation. So the Biohealth District is really focused on maximizing the potential for jobs in those fields, again, because the hospital is such a unique magnet. And the balance of the district is the workplace focus of the plan. There we go. And yes, Teresa?
Do you want to take a 10-minute break?
A
Or a 5-minute break?
Do we have an opportunity to take a 5-minute break?
Take a 5-minute break.
I don't have, believe it or not, I'm towards the tail end of the presentation. How about sure.
Oh, okay.
You want to keep going?
It's up to you. If you're almost done, then.
Let's just keep going. How's that? Let's go to the end of this district and then take a break at the end of this district, since I just introduced it. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, so if we can go back to the slides. So to develop the master plan at the southern end, we undertook a very careful analysis working with the city staff to understand what the constraints were so that we could we could maximize the development potential of the lands in this portion of the district. And this map identifies in green where we have the best soils, for example. They happen to be along the Duda Canal. We have an FP&L easement running through the heart of the district. That's located in the dashed yellow line. And we have wetlands that must be maintained. I did promise that I would point out the wetlands, which are the natural features that we have to utilize on the site. The primary wetlands that are going to be preserved, that must be preserved actually, are at the corner of Parr Drive, which is just north of Becker at the southern end. So at the corner of Parr and Village. And then there are 3 fairly small wetlands along the FP&L easement that we know must be maintained. And so we tested a variety of different uses and patterns in this portion of the city. Before we had the market data to further inform the retail opportunities, we tested some scenarios that had more retail and active recreational uses at the southern end. And so these images illustrate the types of analyses that we conducted. While we were in the process of developing these plans, of course, the city had the remarkably successful discussions with the Sandstone Group and Project Bullet, and those 2 uses went from theoretical uses to much more anticipated uses in the course of the master plan. And so as those uses became more specific, we shifted our focus to try to figure out how to accommodate Project Bullet, which has a very large footprint, the sandstone industrial uses, large-scale warehouse uses that are the subject of their development pattern, and we wanted to be able to protect the frontage of Becker Road so it felt like an appropriate drive home. And so this early concept was advanced into the master plan. Whoops, there we go. That's illustrated on the slide now. And so what you can see at the southern end is that along Becker Road, the recommendation is to locate a fairly large stormwater lake and then enough depth to accommodate a neighborhood-scale shopping center, a lifestyle center, probably anchored by a grocery store based on what the market seems to indicate, as well as some inline retail and restaurant uses. There is potential and market demand for additional mixed use that we think would be heavy towards smaller footprint residential use. One of the things we've found in analyzing the city's residential composition, and the residents of the city know this well, there's a lot of single-family residential, there's not a lot of multifamily, and there's not a lot of townhouse. Some of those uses have come in the last 5 years into the Southern Grove general area, and there's market for additional use in that footprint, that smaller residential footprint. We recommend to the city an appropriate location for that mix of uses is along Village Parkway and along Becker Road. The city already has restrictions in place to prevent industrial uses from being developed directly along those roadways. What the master plan represents is deepening those corridors just enough to allow a double row of buildings. That makes those uses more marketable for a mixed-use pattern that can include residential and small neighborhood-serving retail as well. What you can see on this image is the recent plans that have been provided by both Sandstone and Project Bullet are shown on the master plan sketch at the southern end. And so all of those users can fit comfortably at the southern end of the site. And the recommendation is that additional industrial uses should be located along the edge of the Southern Grove property, that it's along I-95. Those are users that are benefited by I-95 visibility, and we know we don't want to locate them along Village Parkway. And what you can see as you travel from the southern end of the master plan north, the pattern of industrial users would continue all the way up to the Biohealth District with a reservation for mixed uses along the edge of Village Parkway, both to protect Village Parkway and to further diversify the mix of uses to make it a more sustainable district. Zooming in, again, the footprints for Sandstone that represent up to 3.2 million square feet can be accommodated without overwhelming Becker Road. So the Welcome to Port St. Lucie opportunity that you have when you drive down Becker Road can have lake frontage and a mix of uses with landscaping that are more appropriate for a gateway feature. And the industrial users are not as visible from the edge of Becker and not visible from Village Parkway either. So those corridors can be protected and amenitized. Again, the sandstone proposal that is the most current approach for land development, represented on the image on the screen. So, and that's a pause point, Teresa. Okay.
Perfect. For those of you out in Zoom, we are going to ask for a 5-minute break. And when we come back, we are going to answer some of your questions and do a polling question. But we want to give everyone a little break to catch their breath and get a drink of water. So we're going on a 5-minute break.
We did at 7:30.
We back at 7:27.
Well, welcome back to our Center Grove workshop. So hopefully everyone had the well-deserved break they needed. A couple of housekeeping items just to touch on.
Try that again. Hi, welcome back to the Southern Grove Workshop. A couple housekeeping items to touch on that have come up during the questions that have been submitted to the city. One thing to mention is this workshop presentation and a recording of the workshop will both be available on the city's website. So check the city's website for that, and you'll have all the background detail. Secondly, there are a couple of questions that have been raised on different aspects of the plan, and I think we'll be covering those as we go with respect to wetlands, with respect to stormwater and canals, and another one with respect to roadways. So we'll get to those in just a moment. There was, though, a set of questions about particular job uses that I wanted to ask Wes McCurry to cover. Wes is, of course, the CRA director for the city. Wes?
All right. So the plan, as you can tell, kind of includes various nodes within it, the bio kind of health district, the workplace district, the commercial lifestyle district. So this is a unique opportunity for the city to really do some upfront planning that can accommodate a variety of uses and a variety of jobs. It's also a unique opportunity to accommodate larger users, larger footprint industries that can't be accommodated elsewhere in the city, that are intensive employers. So this property and the whole purpose behind the planning that we're doing with this master plan is to really kind of maximize and get some efficiency in the land to maximize the development potential, maximize the employment potential, and offer that variety that we don't really have the opportunity for in other areas of the city that have, limited acreage available for commercial development.
Perfect. And if we've done our best job in creating the master plan for the city, we will identify a series of implementation strategies to help facilitate both the jobs in the corridor and the types of uses that might want to come in outside of the lands that are controlled by the city. Those are opportunities that can be incentivized through different regulatory advantages and some streamlined permitting. And so there are ways to help the market deliver things maybe a little more quickly than it might otherwise deliver. So with that, if we can walk back into the presentation, thank you so much. I want to take an opportunity to talk about two major systems in the master plan. And the first one is the transportation network. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, the city has a Development of Regional Impact, or DRI, obligation for different roadway corridors to be included in the development as it occurs over time. And so, of course, there's a street network responsibility that applies to the land. And then, in addition, we've touched on public transit that occurs in St. Lucie, within St. Lucie, and outside. The BEEP project I mentioned is actually a an autonomous vehicle concept that's being explored by the Mattamy Corporation. The Mattamy, of course, is the developer of the lands on the west side of Village Parkway. And so there's an opportunity over time when resources are available for an autonomous trolley system to be included within the general Southern Grove area extending into Tradition. There's a request for more information on the BEEP system, which will be posted on the city's website as well, adjacent to this presentation. So folks that are interested can get more information about that. There we go. There are electric vehicles and golf carts that circulate Tradition today, so we want to be sure that we're accommodating their circulation in the future, and Tradition Trail is a good setting for that. Shared mobility with bike share and zip cars and different ride-sharing modes are rising in popularity, and so we anticipate those different modes will be present in and around the Southern Grove area as well, and we've accommodated for them. Electric vehicles on the rise as well, and so electric car recharging locations are a type of infrastructure that can be included within the master plan. There we go. Of course, we have non-motorized users out on the network, and so people are walking and biking and taking strollers on the sidewalks and trails in and around the Southern Grove property. So, and then on the rise is personal mobility with different types of personal wheeled vehicles that can also be accommodated on a Tradition Trail network. And so with that, the plan does identify the major roadways in the district, and I'll ask the IT folks to give me a hand in zooming out because I think the slides are getting clipped off just a bit. So if you can zoom out, there we go. Then we can actually see the entire roadway network, and that's perfect. And so the major roadways are identified in red. Tradition Parkway at the north, Discovery Way just about a quarter of the way down, Marshall Parkway at the center, Parr Drive towards the southern end, and then Becker Road at the very southern border of the Southern Grove master plan area. And then Village Parkway, of course, is the main east-west spine. And so one of the things, sorry? North-south spine, thank you, north-south spine. I did need a coffee, I only got a water. And so what the master plan does is delineate the additional internal roadway network. And I want to touch on this for a moment. So Hegener Drive, of course, is the main spine road, north-south spine road, between I-95 and Village Parkway. And that's partially constructed, and additional users as they come in will continue to facilitate the construction of Hegener to help internalize trips, jobs-focused trips, within the Southern Grove District. What's important to keep in mind with respect to the master plan recommendations is the idea of building a street network over time. Streets are the most efficient when there are multiple points of access. If you only have 2 roads, the intersections have to be much larger. But if you have a network of 5 or 6 roads, each of the roads can be smaller, the intersections are safer, the roads are safer to cross, and you can better distribute traffic through the roadway network. And so on this slide, what you can see illustrated in purple dashed lines and purple solid lines is the secondary network that's being proposed within the Southern Grove District. Now, one of the reasons those lines are dotted is because the master plan identifies general areas where, for example, pink at the bottom would be a lifestyle commercial center, anchored, for example, with a grocery store. The orange areas are mixed-use areas that we think will lean towards residential use, and then the gray areas, of course, are industrial. So the only known building footprints to work with at this point are the ones that are identified in the yellow. Those have come from the sandstone the Sandstone proposal that's being considered by the city today, and a few additional users at the northern end. And so what the master plan recommends is, as the city reviews site plans from developers and investors looking to develop individual parcels, those site plans maintain the internal roadway network so that internal circulation can be produced and encouraged over time, and the city doesn't miss those opportunities as those users come in to create the network internally. The better an internal network we can create with the master plan as it's implemented, the less pressure there is on the main roadways, and that allows for us to reduce trip generation within Southern Grove and maintain Becker and Village Parkway as gateway facilities that don't have as many small internal trips that are getting out there on the network, and they can actually function as parkways. Now, one thing to point out in the master plan is the requirement with respect to I-95 access. And there have been some questions that have been raised online with respect to I-95 access. Currently, there are two locations where access has been theorized, if you will. One is at Parr Drive, and the other is at Marshall Parkway. At this point, the master plan isn't recommending either of those connections, but the master plan accommodates the alignment for them to be constructed if at some point in the future traffic studies would warrant their construction. And so the master plan accommodates them, but does not recommend either the connection at Parr, which would be an overpass, or the connection at Marshall, which is theorized to be a single-sided interchange, an interchange that would only be accessible on the west side of I-95. So Joe Capra, of course, is here from Captech Engineering, who is the president of the engineering firm that's been assisting us on the master plan team. And Joe, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that?
Yes, Kim, first of all, Joe Capra, Captech Engineering, and we've been asked to assist Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council.
Microphone.
Got it. All right. All right, so I'll start over again. Again, I'm Joe Capra with Captech Engineering, and we've been asked to assist the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council on some of the technical issues. And just to talk about transportation relative to the interchanges, I think most of you know that there's an interchange already at Tradition Parkway and Becker Road. And so there's been talk in the past about one at Marshall Parkway. As everybody knows, that interchange will have to be justified and whether there's enough traffic for it. And so those numbers are being looked at relative to what's happening both in this area of Southern Grove, but also areas to the west. So at this current time, there hasn't been justification for the one at Marshall Parkway, but essentially if there is one place there, it'll basically be going from I-95 westward. And it's important to note that obviously we want to make accommodations for it relative to how we develop the land. And if you can look at the plan, you'll also see that we have a system of lakes and so forth. And we just want to make sure we've accommodated if it ever does become necessary. The second area of concern was at Parr Drive. Now, the Parr Drive area that crosses 95 is just to do that, cross 95. It wasn't planned to have an interchange at that location. And at this point, we'll leave it in place. However, there's been pros and cons about putting that crossing of 95 in place. So those two items are still out there under consideration. I think relative to the transportation plan that Kim has shown, it's important to recognize that the Hegner Drive plan has been started at this time, but it'll be developed as the developments happen, the land use happens, and so forth. Things to recognize is, what we try to do is obviously make those complete type streets of some sort relative to maybe having bike lanes, whether we have walkable areas, parking. Of course, part of this area will have some freight, so we want to accommodate that type of traffic also in these areas. But important to us is to make sure that we don't overflow or put this commercial type or industrial type vehicles into the residential area. So those are things that will be looked at as they develop the the transportation system. So again, there's a system of complete streets. There'll be a system of making sure we separate our commercial from residential areas, the interchanges. All these things will be integrated. There may be some roundabouts, as you've seen on the plan, things like that. Again, the idea is to accommodate the traffic that will be coming into the area.
Super. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
Okay, so we can go back to the presentation. So again, just to emphasize, of course, the alignments are potential in the master plan. So we've reserved the room for those connections to happen, but the master plan does not recommend connections in either of those locations. Just to point that out. If the Marshall Parkway connection were to happen, that does create a different marketable opportunity for the property that's just to the north. And so identified in the green hatched area is about a 35-acre piece of land that could be an appropriate site for some of those active recreational uses we talked about, a Top Golf type driving range or go-karts or paintball or those types of things, the water park. Those types of users require both I-95 visibility and access. And so the only other point where we would suggest they could reasonably be accommodated would be if the Marshall Parkway interchange happens. Potentially, we're suggesting to the north of that site, adjacent to what we're suggesting would be a lake. So there's additional opportunity for kind of water-based recreation as well, wave runners and skiing and that type of thing. But again, that location we think is only viable for those types of uses if an interchange happens, and there's no forecast for an interchange to take place there anytime in the near-term horizon. The other aspect of transportation, of course, is Tradition Trail. And so Tradition Trail has an alignment for Tradition Trail has been identified in the master plan. And so the green, kind of the bright green line that you can see illustrated on this slide illustrates Tradition Trail, the recommended Tradition Trail alignment. Starting at Becker Road, I'll start at the southern end. The trail would come up at the intersection of Hegner Drive, bend to the west, and then we would suggest it should be aligned along the lakes that are recommended in that location to create both a natural edge and better protect those lakes from environmental pollutants. We'd suggest that the trail would continue up along the western side of the property through the mixed-use areas, but avoiding those industrial workplace warehouses that may come in the future, because that's not the right setting for the trail. But we want to keep the trail near residential and commercial, and retail type uses along the western side. What the slide suggests, what the slide on the screen illustrates is the trail can continue all the way north into the Biohealth District, travel through the Biohealth District, across Tradition Parkway, into the Landing and Tradition Village Square. And the trail can have interconnections into existing trail segments at the northern end, all the way along the western side, and at the southern end along Becker Road. And so that's a priority certainly in the master plan, and the uses and stormwater features have been designed to make for the best alignment of Tradition Trail that we can develop. The stormwater lake system is the other key feature to touch on. It's the last one, by the way. So if you're thinking, "Good God, this has been a long workshop," we're nearly at the end. So the last slide, the last set of slides covers the stormwater system, and this image illustrates the various stormwater districts that we've identified to better handle stormwater and make sure lakes are full when we have droughts, because those are more attractive lakes, but lakes can be emptied ahead of storms, which are called pre-storm drawdown. We've divided the Southern Grove area into 4 districts to better handle stormwater, and so the districts are generally identified on the image on the screen. And what we know is the Duda Canal runs along the edge of I-95, and that takes stormwater from points north of Tradition Parkway down along the edge of the Southern Grove District, and ultimately empties into the C-23 and the C-23 carries that stormwater down into the Water Management District lake system and ultimately to its point of discharge. And so to maximize the stormwater system within the Southern Grove District, what we've done is locate a series of lakes that would be interconnected. And so stormwater currently travels from points west of Village Parkway into the Southern Grove property. And so what we've done is identify a series of lakes that can channel and deliver that stormwater through the Southern Grove property, east into the Duda Canal, and then ultimately south into its point of discharge. We've actually used the lakes as buffers as well. So the lakes are located specifically to provide better buffering along Becker Road, for example, because it's a more attractive edge for the gateway opportunities along Becker. And the lakes are also located between the mixed use and industrial areas, again, to create better buffers between those uses. What we would suggest is a lake system of this type is the most efficient way to handle stormwater. It meets all the regulatory requirements, and it actually raises the value of the land because a master stormwater lake system allows the individual sites to be developed more efficiently. It allows the stormwater to be treated better, so we get cleaner stormwater as a result. And by interconnecting all of the lakes, we can make sure the lakes have enough water in them when there's droughts, so we don't have dried-looking lakes, which can happen sometimes, but instead we can backstage water and fill the lakes when we want to fill them. Or in the event of storms, we can draw down the lakes so that they can be discharged and they can accommodate stormwater when we have heavy rains. This is the best way, the best practice with respect to handling stormwater, and so that's an ingrained part of the master plan. So with that, that's actually the whole tour. With respect to breaking down land uses, the city's holdings of the net developable land, we'd recommend about 3/4 of the city's holdings should be developed in some type of workplace, job-centric type use. Maybe about 22% or so would be developed in a mixed-use format. We think that's consistent with what the market would want to bring to the district, and it also gives us a chance to distribute the mixed use in a manner to protect Becker Road and protect Village Parkway. And then a very small portion, about 5%, is recommended as slightly more intense lifestyle commercial. There's a question online as to what is lifestyle commercial. In terms of the coding that's represented in this master plan, that would represent a more intense commercial shopping center or small district. And so at the corner of Becker and Village Parkway, as we mentioned, that's likely an appropriate location for a grocery store anchored shopping center to service the populations, particularly that are to the south and to the west and north. And the other opportunity for that more intense type of commercial development would be at the intersection of Marshall Parkway and Village Parkway. And so that's the other pink area that's identified, just two pink polygons, if you will, on the drawing that illustrate the locations for that type of use. And so with that, that is our tour of the master plan. Teresa, there are a couple of just closing questions if the public is still has the energy for them. So I'm going to yield to you. There's 3 questions. The first one is if you are going to head out on Tradition Trail. Teresa, you want to take over and do the questions? I'll just flip through them. I'll flip through the slides for you. Okay?
So those of you that are still there with us, I think we have...
There's 3 slides.
Thank you. We have about 81 people still participating with us, so that's really exciting. Let's go through some polling questions, and then we will answer. There's about 10 more questions out there that we want to address. So if you were to use a Tradition Trail, what would be?
Which mode would you be most likely to use?
Oh, did it just flip? I'm so sorry. Excuse me. If you were to head out on Tradition Trail, which mode would you be most likely to use? So answer, we have various opportunities there on how you would head out. The next slide, if you were to use the Tradition Trail, what would be your typical destination? A couple of options here. You see the polling has opened, so please tell us what you're thinking. And we only got these 2 questions.
And then there's 2 more after that, and that's the end of the presentation.
Okay, and then after this, we got 2 more polling questions, and we will close it up and then get to your specific questions. And that does it for today. And I hope that everyone is enjoying this first time for all of us to be doing such a thing. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I feel like it's New Year's Eve.
Every time.
Every time it's like, yay. Okay. If you were to head out, it looks like we almost have like a split between walking or running and then some biking. We have something else with wheels. So that could be a golf cart, perhaps. If you were using a tradition trail, what would be your typical destination? We have parks and recreational areas. Seems to be, again, an evenly split with dining and or shopping. And tradition trail itself. So yes, I think it'll be a great addition to the community and the citizens of the city. So that'll be exciting when it's all completed. Okay, do we want to do the next questions? We want to put those up on the screen. Okay, for a commercial center at Becker Road and Village Parkway, which uses would you like to see? We have various options, so let us know what you're thinking with that. And the next question and the final polling question is, which of these gateway features are the most important to welcome people to Southern Grove? Landscaping, lighting, signage, public art, building appearance, all of them, or something else? Let us know, and I am going to count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did everybody get that? I'll count again. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Get your vote in. Okay. So for the first one of a commercial center at Becker and Village, we have all of the above being the winner. Grocery store, great. Restaurants, awesome. Very good. And then gateway features. The winner, half of you pretty much, or a little over half, all would like to see all of them. That would be gateway feature, public art, building appearance, landscaping, all wonderful things. And we do have a great public art program, so you will be certainly seeing some more of that. So now we will go to the final questions.
You want to handle some questions for a couple of minutes? Yeah, be happy to field questions if there are questions to field. Okay.
There are. So let me just bring that up. My apologies. Don't know what happened here. Okay. So we have a question. What opportunities are there for small or mid-sized local businesses to purchase property and develop their own buildings rather than renting in large institutional properties?
Sure.
I don't know if you or Wes would like to answer that.
Sure, I'll give it a try. One of the things that we find in and around the Southern Grove area is there's a lot of transition. So there are some vacant spaces that are beginning to open up due to the market conditions that we're in now. And so we would expect there will be a variety of locations that can be accommodated by smaller users in those areas that are around the district. One of the things that we've tried to keep in mind as we've developed the master plan is the uniqueness of the opportunity that's represented by Southern Grove and the city's ownership of that land. We don't have a comparable location like this in the region that can accommodate larger footprint industrial warehouse type users from a site that has access to both I-95 and the Turnpike. And so that's been a driver in trying to detail the master plan development program. We do have a strong emphasis on suggesting to the city the ability to retain the opportunity to land those uses in the city because the jobs are so needed, and the location is so unique. But in addition to the 75% of area, roughly, that we suggest could be best utilized in that type of format, there's still 25% of the land area that's recommended to be in a lifestyle center, a small commercial center, or in a mixed-use format. And so there's really a fairly substantial amount of area left outside of those larger footprint users that could accommodate those smaller users, smaller businesses, move-up businesses, and those types of uses. So, West, is there anything to add to that, or did that cover that appropriately?
I think that covered it.
Okay, super. Next question.
Okay, there was a question about, I think it's a streetscaping and vision along Village Parkway. They would like to see it as natural as possible and camouflage the light commercial property similar to Crosstown. Can the engineers or Kim speak to that?
Absolutely. So among the recommendations to the city is the landscape theme and depth of landscaping to be located along Village and Becker, because those are our two frontages. We certainly would emphasize the city celebrate the great natural landscaping that it has utilized along Crosstown Parkway. It's got a gateway appearance to it, not by accident. And so, yes, there's a recommendation among the policy recommendations to substantially buffer Village Parkway. That's also the reason why the Village Parkway edge is suggested to have better depth, larger depth to it than what was initially envisioned. By allowing a slightly deeper edge along Village and Becker both, there's the ability to set back and have a better landscape buffer and accommodate, again, a second row of buildings if the market brings that can lean towards a mixed-use pattern of development and not just smaller footprint retail users and restaurants like the ones that have come in near the intersection of Tradition and Village. So a different pattern of use there that can provide better screening.
Then we have a question, I think this is for Joe, about canals. Are there any canals in Southern Grove, I'm reading these verbatim, so, that are directly connected to Lake Okeechobee? Will any of the lake discharge be near Southern Grove?
Okay, to answer the question is whether there's any canals and is there any chance that the canals connect to Lake Okeechobee, I believe is what the question has been driving towards. So everybody knows the drainage pattern here in Southern Grove itself is actually, as Kim has alluded to, goes from west to east and then from north to south. And west to east, there'll be a system of lakes and some canals and some piping that'll get the water from basically Village Parkway to what is currently the Duda Canal. That Duda Canal will be enhanced. It will be basically provided littoral shelves, some wetland features. We will be widening out in some areas. But essentially that Duda Canal goes from north to south. And then there's a control structure before it enters what is the C-23 Canal. And so everybody knows the C-23 Canal actually flows mainly from west to east, and that ends up in the North Fork of the St. Lucie River. So it's really not a plan to connect anything towards Lake Okeechobee. Essentially, this connection will be from the Duda Canal into the C-23 Canal, and that ultimately goes to the North Fork of the St. Lucie River.
Okay. Other questions, Teresa?
Yes, we have a couple more. Wes, did you want to speak to the industries along the Becker Road area and around Southern Grove and what that may look like?
Certainly. So the industries that we're planning for, like we mentioned earlier, are pretty diverse. The activity that we're seeing currently in the market and the activity that we're seeing working with Sansone are primarily centered around distribution uses in the vicinity of Becker Road. And as you work further north up towards where you might have seen the recent Tamco City Electric building open up, we're seeing interest in manufacturing type uses in that area. Specifically, Excel International is a company that's coming into that area. Recently got their site plan approved. That's a manufacturing company that will be joining Tamco City Electric. And there was also kind of an earlier question related to tech jobs. While we currently don't have any tech jobs projects that are in the pipeline, the property here is well suited to accommodate additional tech jobs with the recent kind of occupancy of Florida International University in the Torrey Pines building, as well as the Cleveland Clinic, Florida Center for Innovation up around the hospital. There's an opportunity for more tech job development, and we are hopeful that that will continue to develop as those projects move forward and those opportunities materialize around those projects.
Okay.
Kim, I believe you could answer the question. When you say billboards, do you mean attractive signage or literally ugly billboards? To me, LA Fitness looks fine from I-95, but I would hate to see real billboards or towering Cracker Barrel type signs.
Right. So thanks. I saw that question come across. So we did not at all mean to suggest ugly billboards were the recommendation for the district. There's a term, there's kind of a planning term that refers to buildings that have letters set into the side that creates the ability to see them from I-95. So like the type of lettering on the side of Cleveland Clinic allows that building to essentially advertise the use. Tamco does as well. And so never a recommendation for actual billboards, but just signage affixed to the buildings, letters affixed to the buildings so that the building users can be identified from I-95. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Okay. We have about 3 more questions. Do you want to finish those, or do you have more slides?
That's it. I'm at the end of my presentation.
Okay.
Aside from schedule.
And then, okay, wonderful. So we'll ask a couple more. Can you talk about, the question is regarding,
Timeline for finalizing.
excuse me.
Why don't I touch on that? So.
Go ahead, yes.
fact, if we can
I've lost track, I'm so
Put up
sorry.
the presentation, the next slide is the schedule. Look at that, it just popped up. So if we can put that schedule up on the screen. The timeline for finalizing, we have gone through quite a bit of analysis over the past roughly year with the city. We are waiting for the final interpretation of the traffic study so we can finalize the transportation recommendations in the plan. We'll be presenting an update to the City Council at its meeting on Monday of next week. And then we will have a final presentation before the City Council in the month of December. And so that's where we are with respect to finishing up the project. Tonight's presentation, both its recording and the PowerPoint, will be available on the website. And then we'll be finalizing, based on this input, the master plan and putting it into the city's hands for review and then final presentation. Okay?
Okay. I believe that covers all of the questions. Staff will be answering some more that we can answer directly. But I think that wraps it up, and I will leave it as, I know that there has been a question as to if you would like to provide some additional comments to us. You can do that by contacting myself and emailing me. My email address is tsarno, TSARNO @cityofpsl.com. You could also call the planning department and get a hold of me there as well, and I'll be happy to answer any additional questions or email you a response if you felt like we weren't successful at answering your question directly tonight. But we certainly appreciate all of your effort, and Kim, if you want to have any closing thoughts, but.
Yep, so that is, and my contact information is actually the next slide as well. And so if there are questions that you'd like us to address, we're happy to field those and share those with the city as well. And otherwise, thank you for the opportunity to walk through the Southern Grove Master Plan. It's an honor to assist the city in this project, and we feel as though we have a well-sourced set of recommendations for the city to help it be the most sustainable it can, and be a place for live, work, learn, and play, all in the Southern Grove District. So thank you.